So first, a quick update on the filmmaking front. My friends Johnny and Bo came over, and we finished filming an old Dynamo episode that we started filming. It felt like 2 years ago, but we looked at it, and it was actually like 5 years ago. But we finished it. It's a full rough edit, and I watched it, and it's actually like, it's really weird, but it's solid. And I'm very excited about that. It just needs some green screen work finished up and some wacky compositing at the end. Rock!
You're a really awkward guy.
But yeah, it's kind of fun to realize that I was secretly sitting on like an almost finished film for the past few years. So I don't know how I'm gonna fit in working on that, but hopefully I'll get that wrapped up in the next like month and a half. Anyways, yes, I recently made this kind of hologram shader, which is fun because it's just, you can just dump in a JPEG or a video or something, and it pops it out into 3D kind of based off of the luminance levels, and you just get a lot of bang for your buck. I kind of made it as an experiment, but it turned kind of fun, and I posted a little snippet of it over on my Instagram, and people reacted to it more than anything I posted in a long time, which means I should probably, a lot of people want a tutorial. I don't know if I'm going to do a tutorial because it's just, I mean, there's a lot of funky nonsense in here, but I do want to break down kind of some of the maybe fun things that are going on in here. Oh, and the thing that's fun is that it's all just a plane. All of this is just Parallax shader node stuff, and so it's I don't know. I didn't make it particularly efficiently, but that is kind of fun. It's mostly just a lot of different basic things all stacked up because I'm not all that great at node work, but there's some fun things in there. But yeah, I really do love just being able to swap out this picture and see what happens. Like here we tab into source images. Let's go to, yeah, like an open sign here, and ooh, that's kind of, I've got all the glitches and stuff up maybe a bit much, but I'm kind of just trying to show off what, you know, it can do. You can change the depth, like, whoa, the amount it goes out. This might be a little bit bright. We can change the tint, or we can mix in, ooh, let's see. That's kind of fun. Or you can mix in some of the original colors if you want to, just kind of to make things a little bit more legible. What else do we got? Yeah, here's a video. I actually really like putting in screen captures of like just like graph nodes and stuff, of shader nodes, just because it looks so high tech. Here, let's change this back to something more. I do like the orange a little bit. The white offset the brightness, so just the highlights are slightly different color if you wanna do that. Or ooh, yeah, here's a, whoa. Here we go. Here, let's turn up the depth a little bit. Yeah, it's just fun. It's like one picture can give you this whole kind of voluminous thing, which I think is fun. Okay, enough stalling. How let's break this down. My brain is super not working right now, so I'm trying to get some blood pumping, and I'm gonna try this one more time. Okay. Okay, 100 jumping jacks later, I am now tired and stinky, and I have to use the bathroom. Yeah, that didn't help at all. Now I'm just kind of out of breath. Here, let's create a plane here and load up this picture of me as a baby, and we desperately want to put this picture of me as a baby onto the geometry, but Blender doesn't know how to apply it, and so what we have to do is we have to use some coordinates. And fortunately, both the image and the geometry have a coordinate system based off of, you know, both the x and the y axes. So this would be 0 on the x-axis all the way over to 1 on the x-axis. This would be 0 on the y-axis up to 1 on the y-axis. So this is 0, 0. This would be like 0.1, or this would be 1, 1. This would be 0.5. Basic coordinate stuff. I don't know why I'm making it sound so complicated. And here, let's create a new shader and create an image texture. It's going to be me as the baby. I'm not even a baby. I'm like a young man in that. Yes. Plug it into the emission to make it a little brighter. And by default, what Blender has done is it has lined up the geometry coordinates with the texture coordinates. So, you know, 0, 0, 1, 1, they're all lined up. But we can mess with that. Look at that. And so now what it's doing is it's saying, okay, for the geometry, 0, 0, it's at like 0.1 or, you know, 0.2, 0.2 on the texture. So we'll use this value here and just stick it right there. And that's nice. It makes a lot of sense. You get it. if we offset this like gx 0.5, that offsets it 1 unit and also separates me into good twin and evil twin. But we can do this other ways as well. Here, let's if we hit Control T, it brings up the mapping nodes, and this is the stuff that like Blender just assumes is going into here. If you don't have anything plugged into this, this is just what it's doing anyways, but this lets us kind of mess with it a little bit. And you can see right here, it just this lets us slide it around because it's adding this amount, like 0.5. That's just what we had before, because it's just adding these values to the UV coordinate values. Does that make sense? So, you know, it doesn't matter if we're doing it here or if this is 0 and this is just, you know, over like that, which is really cool. But right now this is doing it completely uniform. You can see it's just adding this amount to every single point on the UV thing. Wouldn't it be cool if we could plug in a random value to just make things real weird? We can do that. So right now you'll see in the mapping nodes there's 3 values, x, y, and z, but they only have 1 dot, and that's because it's just trying to make our life simple, but we want to complicate our lives, so let's separate this out into the base components. Converter, separate x, y, z, yes, and combine x, y, z. And if we plug these together, it's still doing the exact same thing, but now we can just mess with any of these individually. So the first thing, let's just recreate what we were doing right here. Let's add a math node onto the x, and we can just add, see, we add 0.5, and it's that evil twin scenario. Or we can add 0.5 here too, and then 0.5 and 0.5 equal 1, which means it's looped all the way around, and it's just, you know, normal again. Which is fun. But what if we don't do a normal value? What if we do something like we create a noise texture here, plug that into the value. The noise is giving us a random value between 0 and 1. In fact, here, if I Control-Shift-Click on this, you can see it's kind of cloudy. Black is going to be translated to 0, an offset of 0, and white is going to be translated to an offset of 1. And so if I go back to here, you can see it's all, every bit is being offset a random amount between 0 and 1. That's kind of cool. We can change the scale, and if we make it really, really small, just the randomness all works together to make it look like it's actually kind of being blurred along the x-axis. Now let's say that we want to control how much blur there is. If we use another math node here, boop, and here I'm going to create a little value input, although you could just do this. I'm going to plug the value into this and make it multiply, and let's make this 0.5. So now we're taking this noise texture, we're multiplying it by 0.5, which brings it in half, or we could do, you know, 0.1, which is only 10% of the original, or we could do 0, which means it's not going to be offsetting at all. And you can see we just go, woo! One thing you're probably noticing is that as this goes up, yeah, it does blur it, but it's only blurring it in one direction, and that's because we're adding the value onto the texture coordinates of the noise, which means we're basically just saying, okay, we're going to offset you pixel some random amount between here and here. We're saying texture coordinate point, we're going to add, you know, value between here and this, when what we want to do is recenter it. So we want to subtract from everything the average amount we could be displacing it. So if we're going between 0 and 1, we want to subtract 0.5, or if we're going, you know, 0 to 2, we want to subtract 1. And we can do that with nodes so easily. Let's add a math node here. I'm going to subtract this value, but since we only want to subtract half of that number, I'm going to add another math node here and set it to multiply 0.5, and now when we turn up the blur, it feels like it stays centered. And what can we do with all this? Well, let's select all of this. I'm going to hit Control G to turn it into a group here, just in between. And if we want to, instead of using this value, we can plug it into the group input here. Poof. And now if we tab back out, we have this value, and that just controls the blur. And here, if we go under properties, we can call this a horizontal blur. Yeah. Or like, ooh, okay, here, let's delete all of this. Right now, the texture coordinates are providing a nice clean gradient of basically every value between 0 and 1. But what if we mess with that a little bit? One of my favorite math node functions is snap. We get to pick, it'll snap it to the nearest increment of, like, let's say 0.05. And so instead of being like, woo, it's more like chink, 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 chink. And we can see what that looks like just by dragging this in here. And let's also do it on the y-axis. And oh, it's pixelated. That's fun. And here, let's make these both these increments move the same by creating a value that goes into both of them. And now we can just control the pixelation here, and we can do the exact same thing of like, you know, create a group, and this will just be our pixelation node. And I use that quite a bit for like the glitches here. You can see they're kind of all a little blocky when they offset. If we go into glitch controls, under glitch, you can see I've got my snap nodes basically just like squaring up this Musgrave texture. I also did that for the vignette, just kind of to make it feel a little bit more digital around the edges, so it didn't feel like it was just kind of an edge feather. For that vignette look, that kind of dark faded corner, I just used a gradient texture set to, let's see, spherical. And if I Control-Shift-Click on this, you can see it's currently by default centered around 0, 0 in the texture coordinates, but we can hit Control-T to bring up our mapping nodes and just go -0.5, -0.5 to recenter it there. And let's see, let's put it through a color ramp, which lets us control the gradient a little bit like this, which is very handy. I kind of increase the contrast a tad. But I also wanted to be able to control it with some sliders, which meant before the color ramp, I put in a brightness just to increase or decrease the values going into the color ramp, so we get kind of this look like this. And then when I made this into a group, I could bring these inputs over into the group inputs, so I could just control the brightness and the contrast and all of that of the vignette. And once I had these values, I go mix RGB and overlay them against the original texture of baby me. And let's see, how's that look? Oh yeah, there we go. I mean, that doesn't look good, but you get the you get the idea. And just a quick note, in case anybody else is as confused as I was, drove me crazy that you had to subtract from y to make the gradient go up, because it should be you add to y to go up. Like that's how it works. But it's because we're not moving the gradient, we're moving the texture coordinates down to the gradient. So we're going down 0.5 and we're going over 0.5 to center on where the gradient is at. Or just more random stuff here. Let's put a RGB curve in here, and if we tweak this, it actually tweaks those same underlying values. Isn't that absolutely bonkers? Or if we put in a color ramp here into the y-axis, you can see we can move things around like that, but we can also grab the midpoint, drag it around, and make me like a genius baby. Or here, let's see if we can give me like a real big mouth. Yes. You can see now that this is the technology we've been waiting for to make Frankenstein baby. And I'm going to use the knife tool because this was actually a tutorial for Frankenstein baby all along, and we all knew that going into it. Dun, dun, dun. I actually don't know if this will affect the texture coordinates. I don't think so. Yes? Alright, we'll delete this. We'll extrude it, we'll bevel it just a little bit. Set origin to geometry. Let's see, can we make me look surprised? No, because I don't have eyebrows. Hey. Hello. Can I blink? Oh, I want to blink. Blink. That's not blinking. Okay, but how do we turn our monster baby into a hologram? Well, first let's get rid of this principled business. And everybody knows that holograms glow, so let's use an emissive shader here. Here, plug this into here, and now our baby glows. But also, holograms are transparent. So I'm going to create a transparent shader and use an add shader to basically just add these emissive values to the values behind the baby also, which is so cool that we can just do that. It's basically like a screen or additive blend mode if you've ever like used After Effects or something like that. Blend mode, let's say alpha blend, and now look at that, we can see the front of the baby, the back, and the environment beyond, which is rad. I think I want to tint this, so let's go color, mix RGB, and you can see the green dots means it's in shader world, yellow means we're in color JPEG land, and purple means we're in like coordinate application mode. So we want to put this right here in the yellow zone, and we're gonna multiply by like orange or something like that. And yeah, there we go. Now we got our nice golden baby. let's do scan lines. That's going to be in the yellow dot mode here. So let's add another mix RGB, and here I'll set this to multiply if I can find it. Yeah, there we go. And right now it's just multiplying this one gray value. But let's put a gradient texture in there. And this might get a little sloppy, but we'll see. We'll see how this goes. Right now, here, if I Control-Shift-Click on this, you can see it's going from left to right over here. But if I hit Control-T, we get those old mapping nodes again. I can rotate it, and now it's going, you know, horizontally. But if we bring it up, you can see here, and here we can even... Which one is it? Yeah, that one. If we bring this up, you can see it's only giving us basically one scan line. It's doing a gradient between 0 and 1, which is currently right here. Like the texture coordinate values keep going. It keeps going, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but it's only doing the gradient within that one band. So what we want to do is we want to repeat this 0 to 1 zone over and over and over, so we get that repeating scan line look. And we can actually do that with a math node. We're going to set this to fraction, and what that's doing is that's just looking at the decimal. It's ignoring before the decimal. It doesn't care if it's 1, 2, 3, or whatever. It's just looking at 0, you know, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and when it gets to like 0.9, it just goes back to 0 again and repeats it over and over, which is really handy. And now here we can change this. But you can see here, this is just going from 0 up to 1. If we change this to ping pong, it'll go from 0 to 1 and then back down again, kind of like this, and we get this kind of look, which is good. I kind of like both of them. Actually, what I did for the other one was I did a mix. I did a high frequency one like this, and I multiplied that by a less intense one set to fraction. So there was kind of harder scan lines going through, but also present, you know, constant scan lines. But yeah, let's see how this looks multiplied against the original baby down here. Yeah, that's kind of that looks like a hologram baby. Here, we maybe turn the strength up a little bit. And remember, we could always put like a noise texture into the location, and that kind of gives us some warbles, which is maybe a little bit interesting. Or if we want, we could here, let's see. I'm gonna hit I to add a keyframe here, move a little bit later, change this value up, hit I to add another keyframe, and hit Shift E linear extrapolation, and now we have just, you know, the scan lines are always moving, always warbling. And alright, let's talk parallax here. I'm not going to get totally into it because I learned how to do this recently just by watching a bunch of YouTube videos, and I'd feel kind of weird like watching a Blender tutorial and then remaking it for my Patreon. So I'll just link those below, but I do want to get into kind of how it works. So you remember when we were creating that horizontal blur by offsetting the texture coordinates by multiplying the UV coordinates by the noise texture? It's basically the same thing. And here, if I tab into the shader controls, this looks like it's crazy, but it's just the same kind of simple thing like 4 times for each of these 4 layers. So instead of multiplying the UV coordinates by noise, we are adding in the information from the geometry incoming data. So if I Control-Shift-Click on this, you can see that this is what it's providing us, and it moves based off of our viewing angle. And that's because it's actually telling us the angle that we are viewing the face from. So if you think of it like, you know, if you're viewing, how do you explain this? If you're viewing something, you know, and it's here, based off of, you know, this flat plane, and you add that offset to the original UV coordinate, suddenly it's over here. Or if you have this negative number, suddenly it's even further down, which does 2 things. 1, it scales it up, which makes it feel as if it's closer. And 2, it magnifies the offset. And so, you know, my hands moving like this, they're moving the same, but the one in front looks as if it's moving more because it's closer. That's parallax. So that's the general idea, and you can control that effect by multiplying this by some value, like we were doing with the noise. In fact, right here you can see, so I have this layer is negative 0.03, this is negative like 12, this is plus 12, and this is plus 30 to get me the 4 different layers. And then all of these go into my different version of the glitched image. And then I have some thresholds here to say, hey, only, you know, the back layer is only going to be the very darkest stuff, and the front is only going to be the brightest stuff here. And so kind of the brighter something is, the more it only ends up in the very front layer. And then I add all of those together, and that's basically the idea. But yeah, so I have after the value, this multiply node, all of these are going back to the same input here, which is the depth, which means I'm multiplying by a constant value all of those offsets. So I'm just increasing it or decreasing it, exactly the same as what I was doing with the noise. But one thing, these go both forwards and backwards. You can see it kind of expands in both directions. And I was excited at the thought of just being able to motion track this to a wall somewhere and have this hologram sticking out from the wall. And it would look really weird if like the hologram was also receding into the wall. So I want to add another slider that just controls the overall offset. And I think we can do that really easily. Here, if we tab back into here, we have, here's the value. It goes to that multiply we were just talking about. So after that, I'm going to add a math node. Just adding a value in there. And I'm going to put the same thing onto all of these in the same relative position. I think it's so cool how nodes kind of scooch over and make room. And then I'm going to drag all of these over to the same input on the group input here. So, yes. And all right, I think it may have been that easy. So yeah, now I can just right now the offset is very intense, but I can turn that way down, and so it's just barely sticking out from the front here. But yeah, and we can also, move it all the same back into the distance. That's fun. That's fun to be able to control. And here, let's finish the job. We'll open this up and we will bring value all the way up to the top. We'll change it to offset, and now we have offset and depth right next to each other where they kind of make a little bit more sense. That's fun. That's very fun. So yeah, the blur is just that blur we were talking about, where it's just a scaled, a very dense Voronoi texture, which I think is kind of cool. Just all these little rings. It may not be the most efficient, kind of like processing wise. I'm not sure, but I like how it looks. It also, I think, may not be the best for denoising, just because it's so dense. But yeah, let's look at the flicker, because the flicker adds a lot of life. I think kind of makes it feel nice and analog, and it's pretty basic. So here, let's tab into this. These are the values of the flicker, and I could add a lot more if I wanted, just make it a little bit more complex. And it's just cycling up through all of this, and I'm remapping that range. So right now it's 0 to 1, and I'm just mapping it from 0 to the 0.3, so it's not too intense. And that's controlling the contrast, which means it's just always nudging things to be a little bit, higher contrast, lower contrast. But what's providing that constant push through the color ramp? Well, it's a fairly well-known thing, but here, if I create a value here and I hit pound frame, yeah, it gives us 192, which is the frame that we are currently on, and it will always just give us that number, which is a really good way to just get an ever-increasing, linear number going through everything. If you want it to go faster, you can just multiply it by like 2, multiply by 2, and it will just, the number will increase twice as fast, or, and anything in between, which is what I was doing with the speed control. So now, if I change this to like 0.1, the flickers go very slow. Or I can change this to 1, get nice quick flickers. And in this case, even holding down Shift, I couldn't slide the slider in small enough increments to get the speed I wanted. And so I put in this other multiplying node here, multiplying by 0.1, which means I have to now slide this 10 times as far to get the same result, which means this is just a much finer control for controlling the speed, which is cool. The intensity is literally just controlling the mix between our flickering version and the original input, which I don't know, there might be a better way to do that, but it seems to work. Yeah, did I just explain all that? Yeah, I did. Good. Okay. I hope you're with me. Again, if people who know nodes are like, Ian, you're doing the most basic stuff. But if you don't, I know nodes tend to look like pure pandemonium. And okay, let's connect this back to some stuff we were talking about earlier. So in here, the reason I have it going through this color ramp is to provide random variations in the flicker intensity. But if we delete this, you see we have the fraction math node. And you remember what that does is it ignores everything before the decimal and just gives you basically 0 to like 0.99 over and over. It goes over and over. And we can see that. Here, let's map the range all the way to, oh, that's probably fine. You just see it, and we can change the speed to be here. Let's do like 1.2. Yeah, and also if we change it from fraction to ping pong, it won't just abruptly start over. It'll go up and down. So let's see. Yeah, and we can slow that down to like 0.3. And now we get this kind of pulse going through it. And I think that's kind of why I like working with nodes and stuff, is it's just you're learning all of these little logic tools and kind of different mechanisms and stuff, and you can stack them together, and eventually you just run into a problem and you go, oh yeah, I know what I want to do. Like right here, you know, this is too rough. I'll just multiply it by 0.1 to make it much finer control. But what's really fun is watching people who really know what they're doing, just because they just like, you can see they've trained their brain to do this whole other thing. Like right here, I was very proud to have come up with this concept here. This is a concept that lets me control the amount of glitch. Like if I turn this way down, it's only glitching a tiny little bit, or you know, I can turn it up and it glitches a whole bunch. But I showed this to Simon Toms, who's the like the node guy at the Blender Institute. He's very smart, very friendly, very willing to help people learn. But he takes one look at this and he just, you know, immediately knows what it's doing. And in fact, he looks at this and goes, "Hey, you don't have to use vector math. You can just use regular math, and it's fractionally faster and easier on the processor." So that's just a thing to know. And I'm like, that's amazing. That's such a good thing to know. The scan lines are what I was already doing, except I have the two scan lines. This one's doing the ping pong. This one's doing the fraction for kind of that harder edged thing. And the intensity here controls the mix factors, you know, going through the different mix nodes. And I think that's most of the stuff. I think we basically went through it. At the end, let's see. Oh, to get in and out, like if you're trying to get out of this node group, but you keep going back into one, you have to make sure you don't have any groups selected, or you'll keep going in and out of that one, which means just tabbing, you know, clicking on one of these and hitting tab means you get out to the upper level. That's just a weird thing that you have to know, or you get trapped. Let's see. So here I've got some other stuff going on at the end for kind of colors and stuff, and it all kind of, you know, falls apart. But it all ends up here where I've got the emissive shader being added to the transparent shader behind it, and that's the final output, just like we were doing with our horrible baby. So yeah, I hope something in there was useful. It's I think it's fun. It's a lot of basic stuff, but it's a really easy way to just dump in a picture and have kind of a living, breathing hologram. I think I'm going to be using it in a few scenes soon. I don't normally do holograms because they kind of seem like a sci-fi shorthand. Like people go, "Ooh, yeah, holograms. We know what holograms look like." And it's like, yeah, but we're all kind of trying to emulate that, like that Star Wars hologram where they made the effect. Like the reason there's scan lines is because they made the effect by double exposing filming off of like a CRT television with actual scan lines. And people saw that and just grew up with that and was like, that's what holograms look like. But there's no reason holograms should have scan lines. It makes them interesting, but it doesn't really make sense. And just also, like when we used to make movies back in 2002, and I'm like, oh, I have After Effects. This is so exciting. I'll just like tint the thing and use an additive blend mode to like add it on my footage. And anything I used to do like back in junior high, I'm like, I can't do that anymore. So it's a little bit of like an ego thing too, but it is so fun to just add little glowing stuff everywhere, especially if you have like a little bit of practical lighting on set to really make it sit in the footage. I think it's fun. Anyways, I have talked for long enough. I think I will let you go, and I'll upload this as an asset. Have a lot of other silly things I've been excited to upload here, but for now I'll talk to you later.